Good morning, everyone. I believe we can start. Thank you all for coming in person and those of us who are joining us online. We would be talking about learning enterprise, its data, its reports, and what's more. To introduce me, I work as a data analyst in Learning Enterprise. I joined ASU just 10 months back, so pretty new. I love to work with data and just helping our data consumers make more informed and data-driven decisions. I have worked in a variety of domains. In latest is education. I've worked in infrastructure, construction, manufacturing, so like a total variety of domains. Let's begin with, so this session, just to recall, this session is for data citizen and data apprentice level. Just going over our agenda, we would be giving a brief overview of Learning Enterprise, discussing some of our learning solutions briefly. Then we would go over the data sources and tools we have, what is the reporting process looks like, what are the different metrics and reports we have in place, what are the challenges we faced during this process and we keep on facing. We'll talk about some of our collaborations and then what is next for us. So Learning Enterprise is one of the three pillars of ASU, and it's to anchor the public enterprise. It was created in early 2021, and the vision that we have is to provide equitable opportunities to everyone, irrespective of their social identity, their demographics, or their economic opportunity. So when I say we provide equitable, we try to provide equitable opportunities to everyone at every stage of their life. I mean, starting from their K-12, supporting them through their higher education and on-ramp to higher education, and then supporting them after their education through career development and personal development. Just a fun fact, we have had an 8-year-old join the courses as well, and a learner as elder as a 90 years old sign up for the courses. So just a fun fact. Just celebrating some of our accomplishments from last fiscal year. We have had over 300,000 learners enrolled in our courses, in our offerings via courses or boot camps or certificates. We have had over 1,000 offerings that range from some courses or some certificates or boot camps or just videos on YouTube. We have had over 750 partnerships with K-12 schools and other educational institutions. I would be sharing a link to the detailed report at the end. Now, what are the learning solutions that we have and we report periodically for? They are classified into two categories. First is foundational learning, that would be building up the learning from ground up. We support the learners and serve them through the K-12 education and on-ramp to higher education through these solutions. And the other one is for professional and career skills. So we would provide the, for example, we can provide them a certificate course on interpersonal skills or communication skills. We would provide them through this other offering that we have. And we have a lot more offerings as well, but they are not directly managed by Learning Enterprise. What are some of the data tools and sources that we have? So since we are new, we have everything decentralized in our data sources. The ones that are directly managed by Learning Enterprise are the Salesforce and some external LTIs. Then we have our Canvas data living in the Redshift data warehouse, where we can get the gradebook data and the assignment data. We make use of analytics user database as well. We don't have our own there, but we make use of EdPluses and Office of Institutional Analyses. And then some other reports that we get from partner portals in form of spreadsheets, Google Sheets, or just as a data dump or marketing data in HubSpot. For data preparation and querying, we majorly use dbeaver for SQL queries. And if something is not possible via an SQL query, we would use an Alteryx. So for example, if we have multiple sources that are coming from different database schemas, we would use Alteryx to join them and then transform them. For reporting and visualization, we use Tableau and then Reporting Studio and our good old friend Excel and Google Sheets. For statistical analysis, so we are really on the foundation level on statistical analyses. So we use Excel and Alteryx for that, and some of our colleagues use SPSS as well. Now, what does the reporting framework looks like? We've been talking about, like, we have metrics and everything, but how do we go about collecting all the requirements and actually defining the metrics? We would begin with defining a business problem and going through the phase of requirement gathering. We generally get these business requirements through emails, Slacks, or we have a data request form that the stakeholders can fill up and submit these requirements. During this phase, we would be talking to them about what the deadlines look like, what requirements are we talking about, what metrics are we talking about, and we would go in detail. Once we have a sign off from our stakeholders, we would move on to the next process, which is data discovery and collection. We would look at the different data sources that we would need to calculate those metrics that were defined in step one. We would see if we have any data available or unavailable, and we would proceed like that. It might happen that there is some unavailability of data. At this process, we would have to go back to stakeholders and let them know this is not available. We would look at the mitigation plans then and decide how to go about it. If everything goes well, we would proceed to data cleaning and preparation phase, where we would take all those data sources. If there are multiple sources, we would join them. We would apply all the rules and transformations that we have found in our data discovery and collection phase. And we would prepare this processed data set for further analysis. If at this point I found out, like, some metric does not have a crucial data point that I wanted to define the metric, I would go back to the data discovery and collection phase. So I would get that data, and at that point, if I find out that this is not available, I would go back to stakeholders and let them know. If everything is A-okay, we would go into data analysis and insights phase, where we would aggregate all that data, look at the yearly or term-wise trends, see if we see any dips or spikes, or are we solving the business problem that we took on our hands. We would then report and communicate all these results to our stakeholders. This is done primarily by dashboards or by Excel reports. We publish them on our analytics group. We would also hold demo for our stakeholders, so they know how to navigate through the report, how to use it, and if they have any feedback and we need to go back to the analysis phase to better or improve the metrics that we have, we would do that at this point. Remember that there should not be any change in requirement at this point. So if there's a change in a requirement and stakeholders say, okay, maybe we need to change the definition, we would have to go back to the step one and redo the process. If everything is fine with the report, we would go in and deploy it on our analytics group and then set it up for automatic or manual refreshers. This is a snapshot for the Learning Enterprise data request form that we have. We collect basic and crucial information from stakeholders in a time-sensitive and effective manner so that we're able to capture at least the basic requirements and we can start working on it. It might happen that we need to dig deep into these requirements, so we would set up meetings with the stakeholders. And once we get sign-off, we would move on to the next stages. I would now like to talk about the metrics that we define. And before I talk about the metrics, I don't know why that happened. Okay, so before I talk about the metrics, it's important to look at the distinction between a student in a traditional manner that we talk about and a learner. So a student can be in a degree granting program, they can be in an undergrad or a grad, but they're effectively in an immersion student or an online student. A learner would be someone who's outside of this degree granting program, but they are involved in an educational focus. The student would be enrolled in a courses that are credit bearing, so they would get like 2 or 3 credits after it. A learner might get it or might not. So if you're talking about the universal learning courses, they would get a credit if they want to convert it. But for Career Catalyst, it's just a certificate course or a boot camp. So they might get a badge at the end of it. For students, they need to pay for those courses upfront, and if they fail, the course sticks to their transcript. For learners, they have wide range of financial options available to them. For example, for universal learning courses, they would have to pay $25 just to get enrolled and start with the course. And if they get a good grade, they have the option to convert it for another $400. For Career Catalyst, it's like a cost of a certificate. So it can range from couple of $100 to maybe thousands, but I don't think it would be more than 5,000. I would have to check on that. And it can be free as well. So if it's a study hall video, it might be available for free. So wide variety of financial options available. Now, what are the metrics that we have defined? We have classified them broadly into count-based metrics, which would be just looking at how many learners we got, how many enrollments we have. And remember, a learner can enroll into multiple courses, so they might have multiple enrollments. We would also want to look at how many of them completed a course. So these are all number-based metrics. Then there are some success-based metrics, which are percentage-based. So we would talk about the rates. For example, like commit rate. So how many of the learners that enrolled actually ended up committing to that course? And how we define committed would be someone who has submitted an assignment and got a non-zero grade. So when we say non-zero grade, they might have failed that course, but it's a non-zero course. So we just want to make sure that we capture their engagement with the course. We have defined pass rate as well. So pass rate for universal learning courses is defined as anyone getting grade C or better. Then there's conversion rate, admit rate, and enrollment. I would talk more about them. So for Career Catalyst, we are just looking at the count-based metrics for now, but we would be looking at defining more metrics for them. For universal learning courses, we're looking at both count-based and then percentage-based metrics. We are able to disaggregate and report these metrics by the demographics, and all the findings that we report are collective outcomes. So we won't be pinpointing a student from these demographics. We would be looking at the collective outcome for any of the subpopulations. So for example, if I want to look at how does a pass rate looks like for a subpopulation of low income group, I can look at it, but I won't be able to pinpoint at a particular student. I would also like to mention that most of our metrics are surrounded around ULCs and Career Catalyst at this point. When we talk about metric, we want to define a metric, but it looks very simple, but there are a lot of steps that goes into it. And what is the prime step? So a metric is anything that would solve the purpose of the stakeholder. And when we say stakeholder, what do we mean by a stakeholder? It can be anyone from learning enterprise leadership. It can be a dean of a college. It can be a subject matter expert or any colleague from learning enterprise who wants to look at some of the metrics. For example, within the ULC context, a learner can mean just an enrollment in a term. So just a enrollment or a student enrolled. Or they can be a student that is enrolled in a verified mode. So they are ready to get engaged with the course. Or they can be ready to engage with the course and they are active in the course. So it really depends on the purpose that stakeholders want from this metric. What are some of the reports that we have built so far? We have prepared a monthly learner report, which basically collects all the learners and enrollments from different offerings that we have and report them to our stakeholders. We are able to show the growth metrics, show goals and projections in this report. Parts of this report is manual, so that is one of the challenges. Then we are able to report the disaggregated learning outcomes. These are like overall outcomes, or we can go deep in the weeds with course-wise. So we want to look at the different outcomes that are outlined in my previous slide. And we would be able to do that by course as well. We have also looked at the learning outcomes for the summer terms that were overlapping and how did it look like for the learners. Were they struggling? Did their grades get affected or not? As compared to the students that were just enrolled in one of the summer terms. We also looked at the correlation of learning outcomes with the enrollment in orientation program. So does the enrollment in an orientation program, which would highlight how to navigate through a usual ULC course, would that have any effect on the learning outcomes for our learners? And then completion time for on-demand courses. So what does a typical completion time looks like for an on-demand course, and how do we have a time frame that would be able to serve all, not all, but like majority of the learners that we have, and they're able to complete these courses well within time frame. I would like to share an example of an analysis that I do. I would just be covering the 3 data phases in here. So first, and this is an example of a course-wise learning outcome. So if I want to get the learning outcome for a course-wise, for courses and disaggregated by demographics as well. So I'd be covering the data discovery and collection phase. We have different sources, but the major source and the prime source of truth is Salesforce. We get our roster from the Salesforce, and we might apply different filters that would give us like a basic data set to start working with these enrollments and learners. Then in data cleaning and preparation phase, I primarily use Alteryx if I'm combining 2 different data sources that won't actually work in an SQL. So there are multiple data sources here, Excel sheets, and coming from database as well. So I would work with first joining them and then doing the cleaning and transformation, just standardizing the data types and then defining any new fields or putting filters or just transforming any rules that we get. Then the aggregation part, where we would report these metrics by the different subpopulation. And during the cleaning and transformation phase, we make sure that we de-identify any personal identification information. Now, how does an analysis look like? This is a basic pivot table that we get out of the aggregated demographics. So CLPR means committed learner pass rate. We are looking at all the enrollments that passed for all the courses term-wise. We have the ability to select a particular course and look at how a subpopulation is doing in that course. And we make it easier visually just by giving the color coding. So this is one of the percentage-based metrics that we have. We also have count-based metrics. So if I want to go into details and look at, okay, what were the committed enrollments for a particular term for a particular course, I can do that. And then, of course, we would report it by charts as well because it's visually pleasing. It engages your cognitive sense. And what do we do with these reports? We track the learner and enrollment performance. We want to look at how their outcomes look like. What is the enrollment for a term over the year? We want to remove barriers for low socioeconomic learners by identifying any inequities in our courses. We want to, it goes without saying, we want to improve the equity outcomes for our learners within courses by pointing out any inequity we are seeing using these metrics. If we are able to find any inequity or find that any learner, any particular subpopulation is suffering in a course, we want to test out interventions to see if we can increase their engagement or we can increase their learning outcomes. We want to evaluate the pilots and the effectiveness of any pilots and cohorts that we are that we have held, and we do that by looking at the subpopulations, their learning outcomes. And we want to use these metrics to design better courses, have better course design for our new offerings that we have. Now with data comes challenges, and since we are pretty new, we have a lot of foundational challenges. First and foremost is getting data consolidation from multiple sources, and remember, everything is manual. So we are trying to automate it, but there are multiple sources that we need to deal with. Then from partner data that we are getting, there are different formats. So someone might give us a data dump in CSV, we might have Excel, or we're just looking at a dashboard on partner portal. Then, of course, the manual data collections. For most of our reports, we want to automate them, and that's one of the future work. But right now, we are collecting that data manually. Then there might be product changes. So our products are ever changing. For example, we recently got rid of the audit feature in ULC. So it's just verified learners for now. Users won't be able to look at the content if they have not verified. So with this came the change of defining what a learner is. So the metrics keep on changing based on the product changes. And then there are inconsistent definitions among different reports that we use, and we want to have a consistent format and a uniform definition among all our reports, so that we are looking at just one source of truth, and we don't have second thoughts when we are reporting metric. Then there can be project-specific roadblocks as well. While I was working on one dashboard and we were looking at Canvas live events, we find out that we were not even tracking them. So it would not have, we would not have found them if we were not working in specific projects. So there might be case when we find some challenges when we are looking at specific projects. I just want to get everyone into a small activity. We can discuss what the challenges look like for you in your unit, and we can possibly get into groups of 2 or like in your table and discuss. If everyone is almost done, we can come back. Would anyone like to share what they discussed, or what does a challenge look like to them? Yeah, go ahead.
Well, we didn't discuss this, but one challenge that I noticed is there's often not consistent definitions of race or ethnicity, and it can vary significantly. Sometimes people can choose multiple races, sometimes they can choose one. For example, how do people code some people Latino and Black, for example? So, I found that that's inconsistent across data sets. And I'm curious if that's something that you all have resolved.
Yes, so we have that scenario in our case. We do use the ASU guidelines for resolving these kind of conflicts. We have the ability for the learners to choose more than one race, and we go by the ASU guidelines if we want to resolve them. So yes, we did encounter such cases. Anyone else? Yeah.
You talked about how similar the challenges that you presented are to challenges we face all over ASU and the university. So even though you all are a newer group, we're still broadly dealing with the same challenges.
Yeah, thank you. Now I'd like to talk about some of the collaborations we have across ASU. We have partnered with the data analysis team at EdPlus. So ULC was called Global Freshman Academy, and it was under EdPlus before it transitioned under ULC. So under Learning Enterprise. So they prepared 2 major dashboards for ULC and Career Catalyst, which are heavily in use at Learning Enterprise. And the team at EdPlus recently incorporated Canvas data also into the left side dashboard as well. So we have now a complete picture that we want, that we can see for the ULC. So a huge shout out to the team. Then we have partnered with the data analysis and visualization team at Enterprise Technology as well. So I worked primarily with Paul. And we worked on a learner movement visualization dashboard where we can track a learner and a course progress and performances real time while the session is going on. So we would be able to point out if we see any inconsistency or a dip in any student's performance, or like just in general, how does a course performance looks like, and we can talk about the course design. We are working on incorporating the Canvas live events. So we have all the Canvas activity data for a learner. And by activity, I mean their submissions, their clicking on a syllabus or reading a module. So anything that they do in Canvas, and we would be able to correlate that data with their performance in the course. So it would be beneficial to success coaches and instructional designers as well. Here's a snippet of the beta version that we have for the dashboard. So what's in the future for us? We are currently working on adding more metrics in our disaggregated learning outcomes analysis. So we just have the pass rate in there. We want to include the commit rate and conversion rate as well. So we would be adding those metrics there. We would be launching the dashboard that I talked about in my previous slide. It's still in beta version, so we are going through the feedback process and incorporating any suggestions we're getting. We would be piloting it in spring 23, and yeah, let's see how it goes. We would also, yeah. It would be the partners. So they would have restricted views. So the partners that we have, and then instructional designers and the success coaches. We would also be working on an analysis of the first course taken by ULC learners, and then how it relates to their retention later in ULCs. Then we would work. So as you must have noticed, most of our metrics are surrounded with ULC. So we want to work more on defining the success metrics for Career Catalyst. This is some of the future work. So we have everything decentralized. In Learning Enterprise, we want to take everything and have a uniform data architecture. This is one of the wish lists that we have, so that the work in data reporting and analysis becomes a little less streamlined. For all the dashboards that we have deployed and are in use, we want to go and gather any suggestions or implement any improvements that we get, improvement requirements that we get from stakeholders. So we would be looking at the dashboards, like the learner dashboard and all the other dashboards as well. We want to identify some of the recurring needs, and instead of doing a manual pull, we want to have a self-service or an automatic refresh for all those recurring needs and for the dashboards. I don't work majorly with the statistical analysis, but some of my colleagues do. But I want to devise a standard statistical analysis process so that we are able to answer more questions in addition to reporting the percentages and the counts. And then we want to personalize the analytics group that we have on the BI side. So it's pretty standard right now. We want to make it more personal for all the consumers that we get on that site. Here are some of the links. It's for our annual report. So if you want to go and look at the detailed description of what offerings we have and how did we do in the previous fiscal year, you can use the link on left, and the right link is to our data request form. If you want to look closely at what questions we ask and generally how does it look like, you can use the link on right. I would take any questions now. So the primary, so just to repeat the question, where does the success metrics are coming from and what is the source? We are pulling it primarily from Salesforce, which is our prime source of truth right now. And we would be working on including the Canvas events, not events, but the Canvas gradebook and assignment data as well. But we do have the opportunity to have the current grade and final grade already pulled into Salesforce. So we just pull it from Salesforce.
And where is Salesforce?
Oh, this is an Ed Plus Salesforce.
Okay.
Ed Plus Salesforce.
And is that integrated with Canvas or?
No, not at present. It's not integrated. So Ed Plus Salesforce is integrated with Canvas, and it pulls the final grade from Canvas into Salesforce. But in my reports, I don't use, I am not using the Canvas data as of yet. I'm just using Salesforce. I would have to defer this on Caroline. Do we do that with ASU Prep? She's my boss. So do we do that with ASU Prep, or I'm not sure. Interesting question. Any other questions? Okay.
I don't have a question, but I just wanted to say, I think I really appreciate two things about what you presented. One, is your thoughtful process that you're going through with stakeholders and refinement, right? Like this is something that is very easy for us to get habituated, not paying attention to that process. So I really appreciate that. And I think this may be related to a second thing I'll call out is in your list of what's next, the self-service dashboards are actually quite low on your.
Oh, that's not the priority list. It's just like random list.
Well, then never mind. I don't.
Yeah.
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 But I think it's really important that you've been working with your stakeholders as you have been before you start putting self-service opportunities out. I think that's a sign of kind of a mature process that we have a tendency to stakeholders want data at their fingertips. And sometimes we don't do ourselves like the best service by getting that to them before we understand what they're actually trying to ascertain and what they're trying to make. So I was just going to say, I think you're in a very good place in terms of having worked through a lot of manual, like it's not as scalable as it will be someday, but I think this is an important process that going through, and I just want to commend you on that.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, absolutely. It's a process to build the foundation, and then we can work on it and prepare more automatic reports. But yeah, thank you. If that's all, I would like to thank everyone who came in person and everyone who joined online. If you want to reach out to me, here are my contact details. Again, my name is Pallavi. Thank you for coming.